My Uber driver locked the doors and told me he wasn't taking me to my destination because the last person he drove there never came back. I froze, thinking he was dangerous, until he showed me dashcam footage that changed everything about that night. My name is Ayla Brennan, and I had no idea how close I came to stepping into something terrifying. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I had just finished a long shift at work, the kind that drains every bit of energy you have left. My eyes were tired from staring at screens, and all I wanted was a quiet weekend at my Aunt Marin's house. She lived in a small town outside the city, not too far, but far enough to feel peaceful. My car was in the shop, so I ordered an Uber. I didn't think twice about it. I had taken rides at night before, and nothing ever happened. When the car pulled up, the driver, a middle-aged man named Ramon Diaz, gave me a small nod and said, "Ayla, right?" His voice was calm, polite, and a little tired. I got in, buckled up, and told him thank you. He confirmed the address and started driving. At first, the ride felt normal. I leaned back, checked a few messages, and tried to relax. My mom had texted earlier reminding me to stay safe. She always worried, especially when I traveled at night. I had replied with a quick, "I'm fine," never imagining what would happen an hour later. As we drove out of the busy part of town, the roads got quieter. Streetlights spread farther apart, and the darkness outside the window felt heavier. Ramon kept checking his mirrors more often than usual. I noticed it, but told myself he was just being cautious. People drive differently at night, and I didn't want to assume anything. Still, something about his tension made me sit up a little straighter. About 15 minutes into the drive, he suddenly slowed down. I lifted my head, confused. Before I could ask what was wrong, I heard the click of the car doors locking. My heart jumped. I gripped the handle of my bag and said, "Why did you lock the doors?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at me through the rearview mirror with a serious expression that made my stomach tighten. Finally, he said, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen." I felt fear rising inside me. My pulse got faster. I pressed my back into the seat, ready to open the door if I had to. Then he said, "I'm not taking you to that house. I went there last week. The person I dropped off never came back." His voice wasn't angry or threatening. It was scared. That scared me even more. I wanted to demand answers, but the words got stuck in my throat. I had no idea what he meant or why he thought telling me this in the middle of a dark road was a good idea. I managed to say, "What are you talking about?" He looked at me again and said, "I have the dashcam footage. You need to see it. Something happened there." My fear was replaced with confusion so strong I didn't know how to respond. I expected danger from him, not from the place I was heading. The house belonged to my Aunt Marin, one of the kindest people I knew. Why would anyone disappear after going there? Why would he have footage that made him refuse to take me? At that moment, I understood one thing clearly. Whatever this was, it wasn't a joke, and it wasn't a misunderstanding. Something about my destination had terrified this man, and now he was trying to keep me away from it. The moment Ramon told me the last passenger he dropped off at my aunt's house never came back, something inside me tightened so fast it felt like a punch. I stared at him, trying to figure out if he was lying, confused, or in some kind of trouble himself. My first instinct was to assume he was the danger, because that felt easier to process than anything else. But the longer I looked at him, the clearer it became that he wasn't trying to threaten me. He looked genuinely shaken. His hands were gripping the steering wheel, his knuckles pale from the pressure. His breathing was uneven, and he kept glancing at the dark road ahead, like something might appear out of nowhere. I finally found my voice and asked him what happened. He said he picked up a man from the downtown area last week, someone around my age, and the passenger gave him the same address I had entered. Ramon drove him out there, chatting lightly the same way he had with me, but the moment they pulled into the quiet road near my aunt's house, the passenger asked to be dropped off a few houses away from the actual address. Ramon said that wasn't unusual, since some riders preferred privacy, so he parked and ended the trip. The man got out and walked toward the house, disappearing into the shadows between the trees. Ramon waited a moment to make sure he was safe, because the woods made it hard to see clearly. Then he felt something hit the rear of the car, hard enough to rock it. He turned to look, but didn't see anything. He assumed a deer or some wild animal had run past. He didn't think much of it until the next morning when the rideshare app flagged the trip with an unusual completion alert. The passenger had not responded to follow-up messages and had not taken any new rides since that night. Ramon said he tried not to overthink it until he reviewed his dashcam footage to figure out if something had hit the back of his car. That was when he saw something that made his chest go cold. The footage showed the passenger walking toward my aunt's house, just like he remembered, but then a shadow moved behind the trees. It wasn't the shape of an animal. It was tall, human-like, but it didn't walk normally. Ramon paused the frame and zoomed in, but the image was too grainy to make out a face. The figure moved closer to the passenger. Then the camera blurred, as if something passed directly in front of the lens before the car, shook. The passenger never reappeared in the footage. Ramon swallowed hard as he told me this, and I could hear the fear in his voice. He said he considered going to the police, but without clear footage or proof, he worried they would think he was overreacting. He also didn't want the rideshare company to think he was making up stories, but when he saw that my destination was the same house again, he felt sick to his stomach. He said he couldn't just drop me off the way he did before because something about that night never left his mind. I felt a chill run through my entire body. I tried calling my aunt immediately, but her phone went straight to voicemail. I tried again, then again. Nothing. My heart pounded as panic started to rise. I told myself maybe she was sleeping, maybe the phone died, maybe she didn't hear it ring, but deep down I could feel something was wrong. My fingers trembled as I held my phone. I asked Ramon why he didn't just refuse the ride before picking me up. He said he only realized the address matched when I got in the car because he recognized the street name. That terrified him so much he didn't know what to do except try to warn me. His voice cracked when he said he didn't want to feel responsible for another person going missing. The car felt smaller with every second that passed, like the air itself was tightening around me. The road outside was dark and empty, and suddenly every tree, every shadow, every quiet sound made me feel like we were being watched. I kept thinking about my aunt alone in that house, about the man Ramon dropped off, about that shadow in the dashcam footage. I tried to steady my breathing, but it came out shaky and uneven. I asked Ramon to show me the footage right then, and he hesitated, saying he didn't want to scare me more, but I insisted. He pulled the car into a brightly lit gas station so we wouldn't be surrounded by darkness. As he reached for the dash cam, I felt my pulse beating in my neck. I wasn't sure if I wanted answers, or if I just wanted everything he said to be a misunderstanding. But one thing was clear. I could no longer pretend this was a simple late-night ride. Something dangerous had happened near my aunt's home, something I wasn't prepared for, and now I was caught in the middle of it. The moment Ramon pulled into the gas station and turned on the overhead lights, I felt a strange mix of fear and relief. At least we were in a public place. The bright lights made me feel safer, even though every part of me was still shaking. Ramon reached for his dash cam, hesitated, and looked at me with a nervous expression. "Once you see this, you're going to understand why I couldn't take you there," he said quietly. My heart thudded in my chest as he scrolled through the footage. When he finally found the clip, he turned the screen toward me. The video showed the previous passenger stepping out of Ramon's car and walking toward my aunt's house in the distance. Then the camera captured movement near the trees. A dark shape stepped into view, not close enough to be clear, but close enough to look human. The passenger turned around like he heard something. Before he could react, the video jerked sideways as if something struck the car, and then everything went blurry. When the footage ended, I felt a cold wave shoot down my spine. I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of what I had seen, hoping there was a logical explanation, but nothing about it felt normal. Ramon's voice shook a little as he said, "I don't know who or what that was, but that rider never answered a single message after that night." My first thought was to call my aunt again. I dialed her number with shaking hands, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. My worry doubled when I remembered my mom telling me earlier that she hadn't heard from Marin all day either. That wasn't like her at all. She always answered her phone, always checked in, always kept her family close. Panic filled my chest so quickly it made it hard to breathe. I told Ramon, "We need to go there," but he shook his head firmly and said, "Not at night. I'm not letting you walk into something dangerous." His refusal made my nerves spike even more. I didn't know whether to stay calm or run toward the danger just to make sure my aunt was safe. My instincts pulled me in every direction at once. I called my mom next. She picked up on the first ring and immediately heard the fear in my voice. When I told her what was happening, she gasped and said, "Ayla, do not go to that house alone." My brother Leo, who was with her, grabbed the phone and said, "Send me your location. I'm coming to you." His voice was angry in the protective way only siblings can be when someone they love is in danger. While I waited for them, Ramon insisted that the safest place to go was the police station. He said showing the footage to officers would get them to check the house faster than either one of us could. As much as I wanted to run straight to my aunt, I knew he was right. I needed help, not impulsive courage. I nodded, and Ramon pulled back onto the road, heading toward the nearest station. The ride there felt endless. My thoughts raced through every worst-case scenario. What if the man in the video had gone into my aunt's house? What if she had tried to help him and ended up hurt? What if the shadowy figure in the woods was still there, watching, waiting? My hands wouldn't stop trembling, and every time my phone lit up, I hoped it was my aunt calling back, but it never was. When we finally reached the police station, my mom and brother were already outside waiting. My mom hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. Leo looked furious and scared at the same time. Once inside, Ramon explained the situation to the officer at the front desk, and I showed the dashcam footage. The officer's expression changed. Immediately, he asked for the address, called it in, and said a wellness check would be done right away. I told him I needed to go with them, but he shook his head and said civilians weren't allowed in active checks. That answer made something snap inside me. I said, "That is my aunt. You don't understand. I'm not sitting here while you go alone." My voice shook, but didn't break. The officer hesitated, clearly torn, then finally agreed to let me follow behind with another officer in a separate car. Ramon insisted on coming too, saying he couldn't leave without knowing I was safe. My mom and brother followed in their own car. As the patrol cars pulled out of the lot, red and blue lights reflecting off the dark pavement, I felt the fear inside me shift. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was determination mixed with dread. I needed to know what was happening at that house. I needed to know if my aunt was safe, and I knew that nothing about my life would feel normal again until I faced whatever waited at the end of that road. As we followed the police cars down the long, quiet road toward my Aunt Marin's house, my pulse thumped so hard I could hear it over the engine. The trees on either side of the road grew thicker the farther we drove, their branches forming dark shapes against the faint glow of the patrol lights ahead of us. My stomach twisted with every passing second. I stared out the window, trying to see the outline of the house in the distance, but all I could see was the memory of the dashcam footage replaying in my mind. The passenger stepping out, the shadow moving behind the trees, the sudden shake of the car. It felt like the road was pulling me toward a truth I wasn't ready for. When the house finally came into view, my chest tightened. It looked exactly the same as always. A small beige house with a wraparound porch and tall pines behind it. But tonight, something felt wrong. The porch light was on, yet the front door wasn't fully shut. It hung slightly open, as if someone had pushed it and never returned to close it. The sight made my breath catch. My aunt never left her door open, not even for a minute. The first police car stopped near the porch, and the officers stepped out with flashlights drawn. They moved in deliberate motions, checking the perimeter and calling out my aunt's name. Hearing them shout, "Marin," into the night, sent a bolt of fear through my entire body. I stepped out of the car before anyone could stop me, but an officer raised his hand, silently telling me to stay back. Ramon stood next to me, his face pale, his eyes fixed on the porch. My mom and brother pulled up behind us, rushing over to stand beside me. My mom grabbed my hand, squeezing tightly as if she needed to keep me grounded. The officers entered the house, their voices faint from inside. I held my breath for what felt like forever. Every second stretched longer than the last. My legs felt weak, my throat dry, and my mind filled with every terrible possibility. Then one of the officers called out, "We found someone." The words hit me like a shock. My knees almost buckled. My mom gasped loudly. My brother stepped forward, fists clenched. Another officer stepped onto the porch and motioned for us to wait. Those few seconds were the longest of my life. When the officer reappeared, he guided someone out by the arm. It was my Aunt Maureen. She looked exhausted, pale, and shaken. Her hair was messy, her eyes red and unfocused, and she moved like someone who hadn't slept in days. I ran to her the moment the officer nodded. She collapsed against me, gripping my arms with surprising strength. "Ayla," she whispered, her voice cracking. I didn't know if anyone was coming. I held her tightly, tears burning my eyes, unable to believe she was actually standing in front of me. When she steadied herself, the officers asked her to explain what happened. She told them she heard noises outside 2 nights ago, long before anyone came looking. She was washing dishes when she saw a man running across the yard toward her porch. He was panting, terrified, and kept looking behind him. Before she could open the door, he shouted for help and told her someone was in the woods watching him. But before he could reach her, something moved near the tree line. She said it was too dark to see clearly, but the man suddenly turned and ran toward the back of the property, as if he thought he had a better chance escaping that way. She tried calling the police, but her phone battery died in the middle of the call. After that, she locked herself inside and stayed hidden in her bedroom, too scared to move, too scared to check the yard again. She thought the man might come back, and every noise outside made her fear he wasn't alone out there. The officers searched the woods behind the house. We waited near the porch, huddled together, the cold air tightening around us. After what felt like an eternity, an officer returned and said they found signs someone had been living near the tree line: a makeshift shelter, a burnt-out campfire, and a backpack that belonged to the missing rideshare passenger. They also found footprints leading deeper into the woods, too fresh to be more than a few hours old. The officer said they couldn't confirm where the missing rider was yet, but they believed he had run farther into the woods after fleeing the porch. When they showed us a photo of the backpack, Ramon's face tightened. He recognized it from the night of the ride. The truth settled heavily over all of us. Ramon had not imagined anything. The man he dropped off had been chased by someone who had been hiding near the property. The fear that had been building inside me finally broke when the officer said, "If you had been dropped off tonight, you could have walked right into the same situation." My legs trembled at the thought. My aunt pulled me close, whispering that she was grateful I never arrived. As the officers continued their search, I looked at Ramon, who stood quietly near his car. His decision to trust his instincts had protected me from a danger I never saw coming. And standing there under the porch light, holding onto my aunt, I understood fully that everything could have turned out differently if he hadn't spoken up. In the days that followed, the fear I felt that night stayed with me like a shadow that refused to lift. Even though my Aunt Marin was safe, the reality of how close she came to real danger kept replaying in my mind. She moved in with my mom for a while so she wouldn't be alone, and every time I visited her, I noticed how much the experience had shaken her. She jumped at small noises, double-checked every lock, and kept the curtains drawn, even during the day. It hurt to see her that way, because she had always been one of the strongest and warmest people in my life. I spent as much time with her as possible, making her tea, talking with her about regular things, reminding her she didn't have to face any of this alone. My mom stayed vigilant too, helping Marin slowly rebuild a sense of safety. Leo, who had never been the worrying type, became fiercely protective, checking the yard before anyone stepped outside. Watching my family come together helped calm the fear that had taken root inside me, but it didn't erase the images lingering in my mind, especially the moment I saw the dashcam video and the look of terror in the passenger's posture as he turned back toward the woods. Ramon called a couple of days later to check on me and to ask how my aunt was doing. His voice was still tense, as if he was unsure whether he had done the right thing. I told him clearly that he did. If he had driven away that night without saying anything, I might have walked straight into the same danger the missing passenger had faced. He let out a tired breath, and I could hear how much guilt he had been carrying. I thanked him again, and this time he believed me. He told me he had spoken to the police and given them everything they needed, including the raw dashcam footage. He also said something that stayed with me long after the call ended. He said, "I didn't want to overstep, but my instincts told me something was wrong. I'm glad this time I listened." Hearing that reminded me how often people ignore their instincts because they are afraid of sounding dramatic or wrong. His choice to speak up had protected me, and I knew I would never forget that. The police continued investigating the property behind my aunt's house. They found more signs that someone had been living in the woods for quite some time, someone who clearly watched the area and waited for moments when people were vulnerable. They found empty food wrappers, footprints leading deeper into the forest, and a few personal items that did not belong to my aunt or the missing passenger. Officers told us that the man might still be out there, and that, while they believed the missing rider had fled, there was no guarantee he had gotten far. The idea that a stranger had been hiding so close to my aunt's home shook me deeply. I found myself lying awake at night, thinking about how easily danger can hide in places that seem peaceful and familiar. It made me realize how fragile safety can feel when something threatens it in such a personal way. Eventually, I returned to my regular routine, but something inside me had changed. Every time I got into an Uber or walked outside at night, I paid closer attention to my surroundings. I watched for signs I would have ignored before. I trusted that uneasy feeling in my chest instead of trying to explain it away. I also reached out to my aunt more often than ever. We talked daily, even if only for a few minutes. I wanted her to feel supported, but I also knew it helped me process everything too. She apologized more than once for not calling anyone sooner, but I reminded her she had done what she thought was safest. She survived because she trusted her instincts enough to stay hidden. That mattered more than anything. One afternoon, when the sun was warm and my aunt felt strong enough to sit outside again, she held my hand and said, "I'm grateful you didn't come that night. I don't know what I would have done if you had shown up." Her voice shook, but she meant every word. Hearing her say that brought a sense of closure I didn't know I needed. It reminded me that the worst moments of our lives can bring out the strongest parts of us and the people we love. What happened changed me, but it also showed me how much my family cared and how far they would go to protect one another. Sometimes the world teaches you lessons in painful ways. Mine came in the form of a locked car door, a warning from a stranger, and a video that revealed something I never would have believed without seeing it. Now I understand that instinct is not something to ignore or brush aside. It is a voice meant to protect you, and when it speaks, you listen. You never know how many danger signs you pass in life until one forces you to stop and pay attention. That night taught me that trust can come from unexpected places, and sometimes the person you fear may be the one trying to save you. Thank you for staying with me through this story. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you are watching from.